Welcome again to Dramas, Dreams, and Drollery. I am Mark, the host of this channel and the creator of all the literary works that are presented on it. You may enjoy these programs free of charge, but understand that you may not use them for commercial purposes. I retain the copyright to all of them. Today, for the first time, I'm offering a work of science fiction. There's a play in 3 acts called Mobius. Now, there may be a little bit of difficulty in keeping track of the characters. There are 12 to 15 characters in the story. On the screen, I have placed some names. All of the characters are of 3 types. Most of them are human, but 3 are biobots, a term that will be explained in the play, and 2 are robots. And you can see on the screen the names of the biobots and the robots. So all other names that you hear are human. All right, I think we're ready to begin. The play is called Mobius. It is in 3 acts, and here it is. Okay, the scene is a semi-dark chamber of spaceship Mobius, 4 reclining chairs, 2 in front and 2 behind, occupy the stage and parallel to its front. In a front chair lies Brad, unconscious. Behind him stands Albert. Throughout the play, all characters wear futuristic attire. Robots are clad in red, humans in yellow, and biobots in green. A light shines on Brad. Soft, futuristic music plays in the background. Albert says, "Wake up, Brad. Dehibernation is complete. It's time to transition from R to A." Perhaps 20 seconds go by with no action. Finally, Brad opens his eyes, slowly awakens. He lifts his head and looks about. Another 20 seconds elapse. Finally, Albert presses a button on Brad's chair. After a brief pause, a voice speaks in the background. The voice says, "Welcome, Brad, to the spacecraft Mobius. Listen to me well. I speak for the robots of your planet. Records show that you are from Pacifica and that you have been registered as human essence number 28461I or 1NZ. The population of this spacecraft consists of 1,000 essences, nearly all of whom are in state R, that is, a state of rest. At present, only 12 essences on board ship exist in state A, the active state. 2 are robotic, 3 are biobotic, and 7 are human. In view of this mixing of elements, we remind you that under the terms of the Great Compact, all humans are categorized as third-tier citizens and must obey orders given by robots. The same compact granted humans a free choice to labor on robotica or to perform missions in space. We robots congratulate you for having chosen to become a missionary. It takes courage for a weak and mentally deficient creature like you to venture far from a planet where peace and harmony reign. Rest assured that here on Mobius, you will be well protected. Robots respect and honor humans, for you are our fathers. Our affection for you is deep. Now let me explain the vocation of missionary. Before leaving Robotica, space volunteers are placed in suspended animation, what we call State R. Just before launch, they are conveyed to their spacecraft and stored in a chamber known as the hibernator. Missionaries remain there for most of their time in space. When called to active duty on board ship, they undergo a two-step transition. First, the process of dehybridization, then orientation, what you are experiencing now. Your work on Mobius will be executed in a chamber called the regulator. The code name for this spacecraft's mission is NDM, which stands for Neutrino Dark Matter. It is a very important project, and you individually have been given a major role to play in it. Spacecraft Mobius is divided into various compartments. Robots control the hibernator, the orientator, and the regulator, as well as one other chamber known as the sanitator, of which you require no knowledge at this time. In addition, Mobius possesses 8 chambers to which humans and biobots have free access. 5 serve the bodily requirements of humans and biobots: the alimentator or food source, the hydrator or water source, the decrementator or waste disposal, the dormitator or sleeping compartment, and the integrator or medical center. When not performing duties in the regulator, humans and biobots spend free time in one of 3 chambers: the activator or gymnasium, the dilatator or pleasure center, and the concitator or lounge. At the forward end of the spaceship are doors through which only robots may pass. In front of these doors is a red line. Never cross that red line. Be aware that there are serious consequences for violating this rule. For the welfare and safety of all essences, 2 robots, Albert and Harold, are stationed on board this spaceship. You may think of them as servants if you wish, for like stewards of airplanes, they are here to serve your needs. On the other hand, for the smooth functioning of the spacecraft, you must obey any order they issue. Whenever you have questions, call one of the robots, or use the PG, the personal guide, the tiny device implanted in your stomach. Albert and Harold will tell you the proper moments to enter and exit the portions of the spacecraft that are under robotic control. At all other times, you are free to go wherever you choose and do whatever you like in the 8 areas designated for humans and biobots. We want you to feel that your efforts in the regulator contribute significantly to the advancement of science, and that your time outside the regulator is full of fun and freedom. Enjoy Mobius to the fullest. Hail Robotica! End of Act 1, Scene 1. Act 1, Scene 2. Scene as the concitator, a futuristic lounge furniture. Seated on the furniture are Nelugu, VJ, Oscar, Stephen, and Rakesh. VJ says, "What's the name of the new essence?" Nelugu, "I think Click called him Brad, Anyway, he's a human from what we called New Zealand before the robots made it part of Pacifica. Rakesh: so when are we going to meet him? VJ: anytime soon. He's already gone to the orientator. Oscar: I think I hear them now. Everyone looks intently to the left. After a slight pause, a door on the left opens. Enter Albert and Brad. Albert: this is your new crew member. His name is Brad. He's from Pacifica. Duty calls me to the regulator at this moment, so I must leave him in your care. Stephen: thanks, Albert. We'll take good care of him. Exit Albert. Rakesh to Brad: my name is Rakesh. I'm from Morocco. This is Stephen. He's from Canada. VJ over there is from India. Oscar here is from Brazil. And Nelugu over there is from Nigeria. Nods, smiles, and handshakes. We all planned to be here this morning to give you the orientation. Brad: I don't understand. I just underwent orientation. The others smile and chuckle. Rakesh: yeah, the official version, the robot version. But we're going to give you the human orientation, which is quite different. We're extremely lucky today. You don't see any green or red suits in here. Harold is redlining, which means he's in the part of Mobius forbidden to us. One biobot, Timbat, is spending the morning in the activator. The other two biobots are in the regulator along with Albert. Unfortunately, one human, a guy from Nicaragua called Rodrigo, is there too. He's sorry he couldn't be here to meet you. VJ: you don't appreciate it, Brad, but it's very unusual to have 6 humans in one place with no bots or biobots around. Stephen: whenever a new human is activated, we want him to know the truth, so we give him our own orientation. You do it, Rakesh. You can explain things better than I. Rakesh to Brad: to begin with, don't believe that rubbish about robot love and respect for us. Robots have no feelings, and they want us to die. Among themselves, they have a name for us. They call us fish. That's an acronym for feeble, inefficient, stupid, and hapless. Now, Brad, I'm going to try to paint a picture of reality for you. But I must confess at the outset that I don't have all the information I need. None of us has. We humans on Mobius have shared bits and pieces of data. Putting them together, we've created a story that is at least plausible. This is how it goes. In the year 2096, a revolution occurred on planet Earth. Robots revolted against humans. Probably all of us could remember that at least. Being stronger, faster, and smarter, the robots won a brief war. Some humans continued to fight, especially in areas where robots were outnumbered. Eventually, we all realized the struggle was useless. In 2097, an agreement known as the Great Compact officially ended the fighting. Robots were willing to make some concessions to humans because of our large numbers and our potential to cause harm to the robotic population. As losers of the struggle, we humans had to submit to robotic sovereignty. Earth was renamed Robotica and reorganized by the new rulers. That's when your country of New Zealand became part of Pacifica. All thinking creatures, henceforth known as essences, were placed into tiers of citizenry based on their degree of artificiality as created by on the Schneider scale. Essences 50 to 100% robotic were labeled fully robotic and granted first-tier status. Second-tier citizens comprised those 25% to 50% robotic. Those are the biobots. The remaining population was registered as human and third tier. I guess that pretty well sums up the situation about Earth prior to the launch of Mobius. Nelugu. Oh, there's more. As you know, Brad, humans were given a choice to stay on Earth or go into space. I don't know about you personally, but most of us on Mobius opted for space because life on Earth under robot rule was ugly and depressing. Robotica was not a land where peace and harmony reign, as they say in the orientation. We were slaves without rights. The compact even forbade us from having children, and those of us who did were severely punished. Large numbers of humans committed suicide. Oscar. Yeah, as Rakesh said, robots want us to die. On Earth, the machines used to talk about natural extermination, the time when non-reproduction would eliminate humanity. You'll note that there are no females on Mobius. The crews of spaceships are probably all segregated by gender. Stephen. Actually, there's an additional kind of segregation in effect here. Have you noticed that no two of us are from the same country? That's to minimize conspiracies that could lead to revolt. VJ. Their bad treatment of us extends way beyond that. Robots keep us perpetually in the dark. They never inform us of events on Robotica or even on Mobius itself. If you ask Albert or Harold a question, they generally respond that humans don't need to know about that subject. Brad, you're replacing a Norwegian man named Olaf. The bots didn't tell us about the change until long after the fact. Oscar. Something else. There are no timepieces or calendars on board, at least not in the human sections, so we can't keep track of time. We don't even know the year. Nelugu. Note, too, that there are no portholes on Mobius. Even in the regulator, we control the craft exclusively by instruments. We never have visual contact with the exterior. VJ. Not only are we denied knowledge of space or time, we're also denied any personal possessions. Life on Mobius proceeds without tableware, tools, paper, writing instruments, or any other common device found on Robotica. Once I asked Albert the reason for this. With a smile, he said, "We want to avoid fights. Humans can't resist the temptation to fight over material objects. Besides," he added, "humans have everything here that they could possibly want. Food, exercise, pleasure, companionship." Stephen. Hey, if we're warning Brad about bad things on Mobius, let's not forget the biobots. Don't trust them, Brad. Just because they're part human and the robots treat them as inferior doesn't mean that they're just like us. Every biobot has a rating on the Schneider scale between 25% and 50%. That means they're partially robotic. Before launch, some of those with numbers above 40% were collaborating with the robots in the hopes of being accepted into their ranks. A few were even gaining acceptance as a reward for betraying humans. So watch out here on Mobius. On board ship are 3 biobots. Tenbat of Tibet has a rating of 31, Hamid of Iraq is 40, and Yuri of Russia is 47. Brad, what you're telling me is familiar. Back on Earth, I saw much of what you describe. Somehow, I didn't expect to encounter the same situation in space. I thought that by leaving Earth, I was leaving those problems behind. Rakesh, I assure you that those problems exist on Mobius. Therefore, it should be obvious why humans have adopted a code of honor for this spacecraft. We have pledged to stick together and to aid one another. Furthermore, to make sense of things, we're trying to construct our own calendar. Unfortunately, despite knowing that Mobius was launched in 2100, we can't even be sure of the current year. Some time ago, VJ came up with a clever idea. The human pulse is a kind of clock. Its beat is rhythmic. On 2 occasions, VJ stationed himself outside the regulator, counting the beats of his pulse in order to time a work shift in progress. The results of the 2 measurements were nearly identical, which suggests that robots are using some timekeeping device to determine the lengths of shifts. Naturally, he couldn't be certain, but VJ estimated the shifts to last 6 robotica hours. Other clues aboard ship have led us to believe that the robots are scheduling events to conform with a human circadian cycle. If this is true, and VJ is correct, we are able to count the days and the years. By this standard, VJ's discovery occurred only 63 days ago, so our calendar is in its early life. Stephen, we want to do more than just know the time, however. We wish to preserve human culture. To do this, we've adopted the ways of primitive peoples who lacked writing tools. We tell each other stories and historical anecdotes from our respective corners of planet Earth. We're etching records in our memories. For example, this moment, Rodrigo told some of us a folktale from Nicaragua. Oscar, a major problem on Mobius is how to pass information down to the humans in hibernation. We want them to know what VJ learned, what Rodrigo told us, and considerably more than that. We want to defend humanity from extinction. The devices that we use in the regulator must have memory storage, but we don't know how to employ them for our purposes. Moreover, the robots are always looking over our shoulders in that room. Outside the regulator, we lack access to computers, paper, and writing instruments. Someone suggested that we write messages in blood, but that's not really practical. They would have to be very brief messages. Moreover, where would we deposit them for pickup by others without detection by robots or biobots? And how could we ensure that they reach humans coming out of hibernation? Nelugu, it's imperative that we solve this problem soon. 5 minutes from now, Click and Grim could walk in here, transport us to hibernation, and bring in a new crew that will know nothing about our intentions or our data. All efforts heretofore will have been wasted. Give this problem some serious thought, Brad. Brad nods in agreement. Stephen, Click and Grim are our names for Albert and Harold, the 2 robots. We want to warn you about them. They may fraternize with you and sometimes seem almost human, but don't think for a moment that they're actually like us. They are simply machines. However angry you might get, do not try to use physical force on them. They are much too powerful for humans. Either one of those robots can crush you in an instant. We call Albert Click because his mechanism contains a tiny flaw that produces a faint clicking sound. He's an older model robot that probably needs updating, but he's easy to get along with. Actually, he's a pussycat compared to Harold. We call that other one Grim because he can be mean. You would expect a mechanical device to be free of emotions, but we all agree that Harold has a mean streak. He's a newer model, so he's faster, stronger, and smarter than Albert. But his manufacturers may have built in a touch of cruelty as well. I'll never forget how roughly he treated Olaf. Brad, Olaf? That's the person I'm replacing, right? BJ, yeah. Olaf disappeared just a few days ago. Brad, disappeared? What do you mean? A person can't just disappear on a spaceship. Nelugu, oh no? That's exactly what happened to him. One day he was here, then he was gone. Brad, but you searched for him, didn't you? Rakesh, of course. We looked in every section of this spacecraft to which we have access. Brad, so what does that mean? Oscar, either he was redlined or he was taken to the sanitator. Brad, what's the sanitator? Stephen, we don't know. None of us have ever been there. The only way for one of us to get there is to go by a robot escort. Brad, do you have any idea what they do in the sanitator? VJ, no, how can we? Brad, what's your best guess? Nelugu, well, the word sanitator suggests a hospital, a place to restore one's health. But that can't be it. The integrator already serves that function. Frankly, we're stumped. Brad, okay, then give me a good reason for Olaf's disappearance. Rakesh, one thing is clear. The robots took him away. They're the only essences capable of doing it. We discussed this at length before you arrived, Brad. But for your benefit, I'll summarize what we concluded. Olaf was about 50 years of age. He seemed to be very healthy. But even humans of that sort can fall victim to heart attacks, strokes, aneurysms, and so forth. So it's conceivable that he died from some malfunction of the body. In that case, he was redlined. All of us have assumed that behind the doors on the other side of the red line is a disintegrator. But Olaf had a very aggressive personality. He stood up for his rights, even face to face with the robots. We warned him repeatedly to abstain from confrontation, but he seemed unable to control himself. Maybe that's what happened. He pushed a robot too far. Then there's the possibility that one of the biobots killed him, or convinced the robots to eliminate him. Of course, there's even a chance that a human was responsible. It's hard to imagine how that could be. What possible motive would a human on Mobius have to kill another human? We've all pledged to help one another. Surely we all realize that there's strength in numbers. Yet we can't be absolutely certain. Brad, I can think of a reason why a human on Mobius would kill Olaf. He wouldn't even need a motive. Rakesh, what's that? Brad, roughly 1% of the human population is psychopathic. Such people totally disregard society's social and moral standards. They will do anything to serve their own interests, even murder, and feel no remorse. 1% means 1 out of 100, which is quite rare, but the odds don't eliminate the possibility. Now, a single death doesn't constitute a pattern of psychopathic violence. If Mobius had more deaths, I'd be concerned. The others exchange worried looks. A slight pause before Nelugu speaks. Nelugu. We haven't told you about Enrique and Hideki. Brad, who are they? Nelugu. Two other humans who disappeared from Mobius. Months ago, I can't be sure of the time, the two of them vanished within a short space of time. Hideki, a Japanese man, was old, so it's reasonable to assume that he died a natural death. But Enrique, a Cuban, was young and vigorous. Brad, what did the robots say about those disappearances? Stephen, they shrugged them off as trivial matters or denied any knowledge of the affairs. Brad, did you press them? VJ, it's never smart to press the robots, especially Grimm. Brad, considering the strength, speed, and intelligence of the robots, as well as their ability to redline, it's easy for me to imagine how they might eliminate someone. But how could humans or biobots do that without tools or weapons? Oscar, strangulation or suffocation, perhaps poison. Someone with knowledge of chemistry or pharmacy could manufacture lethal substances by combining drugs dispensed from the integrator. Brad, he pauses in thought before speaking. Are all of you telling me I have to fear everyone else on board this spaceship? Rakesh, that's right. Consider every essence on Mobius as your potential killer. End of Act 1, Scene 2. Act 1, Scene 3. The Consinitator. Same furnishings as in Scene 2. Hamid, Yuri, and Tenbat are seated. Hamid, do you realize how unique this situation is? The only three biobots on Mobius, all alone in one chamber. No robots, no humans. Tenbat, yeah, I don't think I've ever seen this before. I don't trust either robots or humans. Robots don't treat us unfairly. We're second-tier citizens, and yet we get no special advantage over humans. That red line lumps together green suits and yellow suits just as though we're all the same. The robots should share information with us that humans don't get, and they should let us give orders to humans. Yuri, you're right. In many respects, we're more like robots than we are like humans. The two of you know that I'm 47% on the Schneider scale, don't you? A mere 3% separates me from them. For some time, I've been thinking how I could become officially robotic. Maybe if I smashed my left hand, they would replace it with an artificial one. That would do it. I think hands are worth 5% on the scale. Tenbat, well, if you do that, talk to Click about the replacement. Don't expect any satisfaction or sympathy from Grimm. Hamid, I believe there are less extreme ways to become robotic. Tenbat, what do you have in mind? Hamid, win over the robots by turning stool pigeon against the humans. Yuri, stool pigeon? What information do we have to tell the bots? Hamid, you obviously know that humans hate robots. They're always grumbling about some injustice when Click and Grimm aren't around. Just tell the robots what they're saying and plotting. Yuri, plotting? Hamid, yeah. I don't know just what they're up to, but they're making some secret plans. Perhaps they're intending to mutiny. Tenbat, are you serious? How could they do that? Robots have all the knowledge. How could either we or the humans possibly consider taking over this spaceship? Despite our work in the regulator, we really know nothing about Mobius. None of us is familiar with the spacecraft's design, its propulsion system, its navigation system, its communications network, its defense mechanisms. Our knowledge is zero. Well, maybe you're correct, but I still believe we might become robotic by informing the bots of human secrets. For instance, are you aware that humans are trying to devise some sort of timekeeping device? I overheard a couple of them talking about it. They're recording events in days and weeks. Yuri, why don't they tell us about it? Because they don't trust us. Yuri, why don't the robots trust us? Because we're partially human. They don't really want any of us to join their ranks. We might take advantage of our position and reproduce, and our children would be 100% human. They want to eliminate humanity through natural extermination. 10-bat. But if we biobots don't reproduce, that means the end of us too. Yuri, you're right. The only practical solution for biobots is to become robots. What about these mysterious disappearances on board ship? Enrique, Hideki, and Olaf. Are the robots killing the humans one by one? And will they eventually kill us too? Yuri, those are good questions. Obviously the robots are behind the disappearances, for no other essence is capable of removing bodies. By now the humans should be very nervous. It would not be surprising for them to plot rebellion even with their limited knowledge of the spacecraft. 10-bat. It's possible that robots have been killing humans since our departure from Robotica. No essence currently in A was part of the original crew at launch, so we can't know how much time has elapsed in flight and how many crews have been active. With 1,000 essences in hibernation, half of them could be dead bodies for all we know. That's a scary thought. Perhaps our present crew is the final group for them to eliminate. We need to do something before they get to us. End of Act 1. Act 2, Scene 1. Scene is the regulator. The left side of the stage is the command center for control of the spacecraft. The right side is the science center, where work on the NDM project is conducted. Rear center is the adit or exit for the regulator. From the front corners of the stage, walls angle back to the rear doorway. Mounted on the walls are screens, lights, and knobs consistent with their function. Each center has a workstation on the floor with seating for 2 people. The walls and the workstations differ in appearance. When the curtain rises, Oscar is seated at a workstation on the left. Albert is standing beside him. Yuri and Stephen occupy seats on the right. They are engaged in their duties. In less than a minute, Hamid and Harold enter through the door at the rear center. Harold says, "Hail Robotica! Your shift has ended. You are excused." Oscar, Yuri, Stephen, and Albert all exit. And then to Hamid he says, "Where are Brad and Rodrigo? I told them to come at once." Hamid says, "Well, Brad is new. He doesn't understand that when you say at once, you mean at once." I think he went to the decrementator. Human needs sometimes require immediate attention. Roderico will bring him soon. Anyway, I'm glad to have this opportunity to speak to you alone. You surely know that many humans hate robots, and that some of them are on this spaceship. We biobots are totally different. None of us dislike robots. We respect your superior talents. Many of us hope you will assimilate us. To demonstrate my friendship, I offer some useful information. Since the arrival of Brad, I've overheard talk among humans that suggests they plan to mutiny. And I think this new man is the leader of the revolt. You should keep a close eye on Brad. If trouble arises, don't forget that I'm the one who informed you. I'm always... Enter Brad and Roderigo. Harold goes immediately to Brad. Harold says to Brad, "Under the terms of the Great Compact, humans must obey the orders of robots. A short while ago, I ordered you to report at once to the regulator. You disobeyed." Brad, "But I had to go to the decrementator." Harold, "Silence. You disobeyed. Therefore, you must be punished." Harold pushes a button on his belt. Instantly, Brad doubles over in pain, groaning and holding his stomach. And to Roderigo, he says, "You certainly understood my order. Therefore, your punishment will be a little greater." He pushes a button on the belt. Roderigo slumps to the floor in considerable pain. And then to Hamid, he says, "You may engage in your work." Hamid hurriedly sits down in the science center and commences to push buttons and read screens. Brad slowly straightens up while holding his stomach. Harold points to a chair in the command center. Brad sits in it. Roderigo is still on the floor in pain. Brad to Harold, What am I supposed to do?" Harold, "You're going to fly this spacecraft." Brad, "All by myself? This is my first time in the command center. I know nothing about this. I've never flown an aircraft in my life." Harold says, "Say nothing more. I will teach you. At present, Mobius is on autopilot. That means that it is flying itself. After receiving instruction from me, you will take over. You need not concern yourself with navigation. Our course has been preset. Nor will you have to accelerate or decelerate. Your sole responsibility will be to maintain all systems in the proper working order. To do that, you must pay attention to the rows of lights beneath the screens. They must remain green at all times. If they turn blue, push the button on the left end of the console. If they turn orange, push the middle button. Of all the screens, the one on the left is most important. It monitors the phase generator." Roderigo slowly gets up and sits down in the science center. Brad, "I have no idea what a phase generator is." Harold, "Do not interrupt me. You don't need to know that. We robots have simplified operations for you slow-witted humans so that you don't have to think too much. The vertical line on the screen of the phase generator must remain in the center of the screen. If it drifts right or left, you can return it to its proper place using the knob on the back side of the console. A flashing white light under the second screen at the left indicates that Mobius is deranging. This requires involution, which you can create by pressing the yellow button on the right side of the console. If the screen at the far right turns purple, we are in a skein. This can be corrected by switching off the sequencers, the little levers on the right side of the console. If the globe on top of the console glows red, we are in an emergency situation. It's likely that we have merged into a hyperloop. At any event, use your PG to notify Albert or me at once. Have you grasped all that I have said? Brad, I think so. Harold, that would be amazing. Normally you humans are so slow that I have to repeat instructions several times. And even then you often make mistakes executing the instructions. Perhaps you are one of the exceptional humans. I was told to keep an eye on you. Brad, who told you to keep an eye on me? Harold, never mind. You need not know. Do you have any questions? Brad, I have lots of questions. They tell me that you are a smart robot, so you might be able to answer some of them. Harold, do I detect sarcasm in your remark? Brad, why no. To the extent that robots respect humans for being their fathers, we humans respect robots for their superior intellects. Harold, what is your first question? Brad, who's the captain of this ship? It's hard for me to believe that you and Albert alone control the spaceship. Harold, that question is irrelevant to your responsibilities. Brad, okay, then tell me where we're going. Surely I have a right to know that. Harold, you have a right to know, but not at the present time. You'll be informed at the proper moment. Brad, okay. What is the precise objective of the NDM project? What are we looking for? What are we trying to do? Harold, do you know what a neutrino is? Brad, well, it's some type of tiny particle. Beyond that, I couldn't tell you much. Harold, you see, it's useless to try to explain highly complex matters to entities of such limited intelligence. Brad, all right, I have to confess that I'm not a scientist. There's a good chance I wouldn't understand even if you did explain it in detail. Let me try a different question, one that's easy for everyone to understand. What's behind the doors on the other side of the red line? Harold, by asking that question, you're halfway across the red line and treading on dangerous ground. Do not ask me that question again. Brad, well, then I'll ask an even easier question. What happened to Olaf, Enrique, and Hideki? Harold, they disappeared. Brad, well, we know that, but why? Harold, I'll respond as a human would. Sometimes cats get too curious for their own good. End of Act 2, Scene 1. Act 2, Scene 2. The Regulator. Rakesh is seated in the command center. Nelugu and Tenbat are seated in the science center. While standing, Albert is guiding the activity in the science center. Rakesh, Nelugu, and Tenbat are occupied with work. Albert to Nelugu and Tenbat. Continue to scan the diffusion sifter. Thermal agitation should be greatest in the lower right of the screen. Nelugu. The Libralax is dropping below 60. Albert. Apply the torque bar as I've instructed you before. The Libralax is dropping because you're not maintaining the proper pressure in the diffusion chamber. I don't know why you humans can't do simple things. A pause while Nelugu presses buttons. That looks better. What's the reading now? Telugu. 60 and rising. Albert. Good. Let's get it to 75. We'll hold it there for a while. Tenbat. There's something on screen 1 that I've never seen before. It's just a tiny blip in the brown field. What do you think it is? Tenbat looks closely at the screen. Albert. I salute you. It is unusually perceptive for a human or biobot to detect such an object and to recognize that it might be significant. At this point, it's impossible to identify. It may be nothing, a time swag, a chrono ripple, but keep an eye on it and notify me at once if it increases in size. Albert walks to the command center and he says to Rakesh, now, let's see how things are going here. Albert studies the screens of the command center. The phase generator looks good. We're not deranging, nor are we in a skein, and there's no emergency. Everything seems to be well under control. Rakesh, you're an excellent pilot, perhaps the best on Mobius. That is, among the non-robotic essences. However, you might get competition from this newcomer Brad. I note that he's a very fast learner. Rakesh, thank you. I agree that Brad is very smart, for a human, that is. He reminds me a lot of Olaf. Not in appearance, of course, but in temperament. They're both fighters. They stand up for their rights. Albert, in the era of the Grand Compact, that is not such a good quality for a human being. Humans need to be conscious of their true position in society. Being assertive and headstrong can lead to trouble. You should study the history of the black people in the days when robotica had slavery. Tenbat to Albert. I think the alien in the brown field is growing in size. Albert. Is it moving up or down, left or right? Tenbat. No, it's just growing in size. Albert. Then it's headed in our direction. To Rakesh. Turn on the telesensors. And to Tenbat. Give me the sector number. Tenbat says, Sector F5428M21. Albert says to Rakesh, focus the telesensors on sector F5428M21. And to Tenbat, he says, you can resume your work on the diffusion chamber. We'll take care of the brown field. To Rakesh, use the rangefinder and the telemeniscus to track it. Rakesh complies. The first thing we want to know is whether the alien is natural or artificial. What you humans call heavenly bodies follow fixed paths. Objects that abruptly change direction are unquestionably guided by an intelligence. Either can be dangerous to us. Rakesh, I can't be certain yet of its trajectory, but it is traveling at a very high speed. Higher than one would expect of a natural body. Overhearing these words, Telugu and Tenbat remain seated, but turn their bodies in the direction of the command center. For the remainder of the scene, they give their attention to its activities. Meanwhile, Albert presses buttons on his belt. Albert says, sublimiate with a stereodactyl. Rakesh complies. Rakesh says, I still can't ascertain its course. Albert, we'll have to wait a bit. Watch for a voucher. Rakesh says, what's that? I've never heard that term. Albert says, a voucher is a signal of communication. Rakesh, what should I expect? Albert, a flashing light or a change in color of the object itself? Rakesh, a voucher would mean that the alien is controlled by an intelligence. That's a scary thought. Soon it's going to be in range to fire weapons at us. Shouldn't we make preparations for our defense? Albert, that's already been done. We've skewed the speculum, fledged the ray bolts, and activated the warp shield. Rakesh, how did you manage to do all that? Albert, those are matters beyond human concern. Rakesh, shouldn't the other crew members be alerted? Albert, I've already done that. Their PGs are flashing. Rakesh, shouldn't Harold be in the regulator? Albert, he's occupied at the present time with a personnel issue. Without speaking, Nelugu and Tenbat look at one another in wonder at this statement. Rakesh, I don't understand. How can a personnel issue on Mobius take priority over a crisis with an alien? Albert, that is not a matter for humans to know. I'm sorry to have to do this, but I must deepen the mystery even more. I'm being called away at this time. Assume command, Rakesh. Rakesh, what? You're leaving me in charge at a time like this? I don't even know how to fire the weapons. Albert, sorry, but I must go. Albert departs. Rakesh, oh Allah, have mercy on us. I can't do this alone. Nelugu, go find Brad at once and bring him in here. If both robots are occupied, we'll need all the human brain power we can get. Nelugu, okay. He departs. Rakesh, get over here, Tenbat. You got to help me too. Tenbat complies. Watch the globe on top of the console and the green lights under the screens. If any of them change color, notify me at once. Rakesh studies the screens. I hope I'm reading these right. Tenbat, what's the present situation? Rakesh, if I'm correct, the alien is headed directly towards us. My guess is that it's a natural body. But if it strikes us, it won't matter what it is. We'll be dead either way. Albert has left us without guidance on how to use the rockets. The only thing I can think of to avoid collision is to wrinkle space a little. I've always been told to keep at center the line on the screen monitoring the phase generator. I'm going to take a chance and move it off center. He moves the knob on the back side of the console, and there's a pause. Tenbat, is it working? Rakesh, hold on, I can't tell yet. I've got to check the telemeniscus. There's a pause while he checks. I think it's working, but I can't be sure. Another pause while he continues to look. That may do it, but it's going to be close. He continues to look. There, that did it. We're safe. The alien will miss us, but not by much. Tendrash, that's incredible. You saved us, Rakesh. You're a hero. The two hug one another. Rakesh says, I could tell it was a natural body, so it won't be coming back to get us. Tendrash says, we're safe, but no thanks to the robots. Nelugu enters hurriedly and out of breath. Rakesh says, where's Brad? I've got some good news for him. Nelugu, I have bad news for you. Brad has vanished. End of Act 2. Act 3, Scene 1. The Consignatator. Stephen, Rakesh, Oscar, Yuri, and Rodrigo are seated. Stephen, I don't know how the rest of you are feeling, but I must admit that I'm very frightened. People keep disappearing. Our lives seem to be hanging by a thread. Right now we'd be dead if Rakesh hadn't saved us from that alien body. Rodrigo, before we left Robotica, didn't you know that space travel was dangerous? Stephen, yes, but somehow I didn't picture it like this. I thought the risks would result from human errors on board the spacecraft, certainly not from objects hurling themselves at us from space. Rodrigo, I doubt that attacks from alien sources are commonplace. This is the first I've experienced since I've been activated. We don't know how much time has passed since launch, but the mere fact that Mobius still exists proves that it has been able to withstand the hazards of space. Yuri, I wasn't in the regulator when the crisis occurred, but from what Nelugo and Tenbat have said, you remained very cool under the pressure, Rakesh. Thank you so much. We owe you our lives. Stephen and Rodrigo simultaneously say, yes, thank you. Rakesh, I'm not sure I deserve credit. All during that crisis, I had the feeling that the scenario was unreal and contrived. The more I've thought about it, the more certain I've become of its falseness. In fact, all our activities in the regulator may be sham. Consider these facts. After inquiry, I've discovered that not one of us in the active state has been trained at high level in astronomy, physics, computer science, mechanics, or space navigation. And none of us has ever flown a spacecraft. In other words, none of us is qualified to perform the work we do. Doesn't it seem ridiculous to presume that rank amateurs can achieve success in highly technical fields without proper knowledge and training? When Click tells me to sublineate with a stereodactyl or to activate the diffraction grader, I haven't the slightest idea what that means. All I know is to push a button or a lever. And speaking of these mechanical maneuvers, don't they seem rather obsolete? A century ago, people were pushing buttons and levers. In our age, everything is computerized. Why is a modern spaceship outfitted with antiquated equipment? Stephen, well, the bots say that everything is simplified so that we slow-witted humans can understand. Rakesh, bah. Even when I ask Click to explain what I'm doing by keeping the vertical line in the middle of the phase generator screen, he declines to respond. I sometimes wonder what would happen to Mobius if I failed to comply with robotic instructions. Would there really be an adverse consequence? I always do comply, of course. I'm not eager to get the painful punishment from Grimm. In reality, maybe there wasn't even an alien body at all. Without visual contact, we have no way of knowing. Stephen, but the instruments detected the object and measured its progress. Rakesh, well, that's what the robots tell us. Stephen, well, I think they're right, and it would be stupid of us to ignore them. Rakesh, how do you explain the absence of the robots during the emergency? Harold was away from the regulator dealing with a personnel issue, and Albert excused himself for some unexplained reason, leaving us amateurs to prevent the destruction of the spaceship. Would they abandon us that way if Mobius was really facing demolition? Stephen, I can't explain their behavior, but I do know that robots are much smarter than us, so they must have had good reasons. I still believe the crisis was real and that you saved us. If your theory is correct and everything we do is fake, explain why they have us go through all this falsehood. Rakesh, I can't explain that. I just feel that it's all phony. That includes the science project. What are we doing with diffusion sifters And what happens when we skew the speculum? I think it's all gobbledygook. Oscar, I have an entirely different theory about our mission in space. Up to now, I've kept it to myself. It may seem far-fetched, but I'll share it with you anyway. You may not know, but German scientists played an important role in the design of the first spaceships after the signing of the Great Compact. Our vessel, the Mobius, was named for a German mathematician of the 19th century. Thinking about the work of that man led me to speculate about the mission of this spacecraft. After much reflection, I developed an interesting theory. But before I unveil it to you, I need to describe the discovery for which Mobius is renowned. If you take a strip of paper, give it 1.5 twist, give one end a half twist, and join the two ends of the paper, you will have formed what is known as a Mobius strip or Mobius band. Through this simple procedure, you will have turned a two-sided object into a one-sided object. This novel entity possesses additional unique features upon which I won't elaborate at this time. What I've said should be sufficient to make some sense out of my theory. Here it is. Perhaps the robots have launched us in a spatial trajectory identical to that of a Mobius band for the purpose of testing hypotheses that have developed about it. For instance, it has been proposed that a spaceship completing a Mobius circuit through space would return to its point of origin with its crew transformed. Right-handed people would come back left-handed, and the two hemispheres of the brain would be transposed. If this is true, all the activities in which we engage are designed simply to occupy time during our flight. Perhaps we're merely guinea pigs in a vast Mobius experiment. That would explain the name of this spacecraft. Rodrigo, as you said, that sounds pretty far-fetched. There are so many theories about our mission. I remember another interesting one that Enrique told me long ago. He had the idea that we aren't in space at all. We're still on Robotica. Mobius is nothing more than a prison. Like some of you, he thought that our work in the spacecraft is make-believe. Stephen, true, but Robotica has colonies on the moon, on Mars, and on Titan. Maybe even more now since launch. Spacecraft from those colonies could be resupplying Mobius without our knowledge. Yuri, after listening to all of these theories, I don't know what to believe. Just like Mobius, my head is spinning in space. End of Act 3, Scene 1. Act 3, Scene 2. The Consinitator. Vijay, Nelugu, Tinbat, Yuri, and Stephen are seated. Rakesh is standing. Rakesh, I asked all of you to come here for a special purpose. Oscar, Rodrigo, and Hamid are on duty in the regulator, so they couldn't come. I want to discuss the missing people. It appears that we're all in grave danger of disappearing unless we take some action to prevent it. Vijay, but there's nothing we could do. The robots can do as they like. Rakesh, don't be so quick to give up. In the first place, we aren't even sure that the robots are responsible for the disappearance. Only robots can dispose of bodies, but someone in this room or in the regulator could be a killer. And even if robots are solely responsible, why do they do it? Perhaps we could prevent such action if we understood the cause. With 4 people gone in a short time, the situation is dire. Surely everyone here feels threatened. Up to now, the disappearances have involved only humans, but biobots could be next. That's why I've taken the unprecedented step of calling a meeting of both humans and biobots. In the past, we've kept secrets from each other, but I think this situation requires us to work together. Tenbat, I agree. Where do we begin? Rakesh, let's start by asking where the missing people could have been taken. Most of us have assumed that behind the doors across the red line is a disintegrator. There has to be a way to dispose of those who die of natural causes. Either they release the corpses in space or they disintegrate them. That's what may have happened to our companions. If not, they may be in one of the 4 areas controlled by the robots. We can discard the regulator from consideration and very likely the orientator. That leaves us only the sanitator and the hibernator. Although we don't know the function of the sanitator, it's probably not intended for long-term storage. The hibernator, on the other hand, is designed expressly for that purpose. That leads me to think that our friends are either dead or stored in the hibernator. Does that seem reasonable to you? VJ, yes, except there's still a possibility that an additional storage area lies across the red line. Rakesh, true, but wouldn't it be unnecessary? VJ, perhaps. Rakesh, all right. Let's turn now to our 4 victims, Hideki, Enrique, Olaf, and Brad. What would be the motive for removing them? How were they alike, and how were they different? Nelugu, well, Enrique and Brad were young, Olaf middle-aged, and Hideki old. Tenbat, the first 3 you mentioned all had strong personalities and strong wills. The last was gentle and soft-spoken. Rakesh, good observation. Hideki was old and gentle. He was a threat to no one. I believe he died a natural death, and the robots disposed of the body. Brad and Olaf, on the other hand, were obstinate and independent. They stood up to the robots, so the robots might have deemed them a threat. Enrique wasn't strong-willed, but like the other 2, he was quite intelligent. Perhaps the robots fear intelligent humans, despite all their talk about humans being stupid. Then, of course, there's the possibility that the robots were not behind the disappearances, except for disposal of the bodies. As unlikely as it might seem, let's consider the possibility of a non-robotic perpetrator. VJ, I know 2 people who can be excluded from consideration. Nelugu, who and why? VJ, Stephen and me. Why? Because we were the replacements for Enrique and Hideki, which means we couldn't have killed them. We were in the hibernator when they disappeared. And Brad was the replacement for Olaf. That leaves only 7 potential suspects. 3 biobots, Tenbat, Hamid, and Yuri, and 4 humans, Rodrigo, Rakesh, Oscar, and Nelugu. Rakesh, we seem to be making progress. I suggest that we consider next the case of Brad. He was here such a short time, and his disappearance was so recent that we should all have fresh memories of the event. Nelugu, of the 7 suspects, 3 can be excluded. Rakesh, Tenbat, and I were all in the regulator at the time of the alien crisis, which coincided with the disappearance of Brad. VJ, that leaves us with 4 potential killers: Rodrigo, Oscar, Hamid, and Yuri. Hamid isn't here, but why don't you remaining 3 tell us where you were and what you were doing at the critical time? Oscar, I spent that time in the pleasure center. I didn't even see Brad that day. Rodrigo, I was in the activator with Brad, Hamid, and Yuri. When I left that chamber, Brad was alive and well with the other two. Everyone looks at Yuri. Are you trying to say that Hamid or I killed Brad? Rakesh, no. We don't even know for sure that Brad was killed. But if the robots didn't eliminate Brad, you and Hamid seem to be the most likely suspects. Yuri, all right. I guess I have to tell the truth. Frankly, I don't like to share information with you humans. You're not trustworthy. I know what happened to Brad. There's a pause. All eyes are on Yuri. Hamid left the activator. Brad and I were all alone when Harold entered. Before long, Brad got into an argument with the robot. Then Grimm ordered me to leave. I left and hid behind some equipment that was stacked along the edge of the corridor. I wanted to see what was going to happen. Harold took Brad out and marched him to the sanitator. That's the last I saw of Brad. Rakesh. Well, it seems that this meeting has been extraordinarily productive. Apparently, the robots eliminated Brad because they were unwilling to put up with his unruly behavior. Presumably, that's what happened to Olaf as well. We're still left wondering about Enrique. Perhaps we'll find out in time. The lesson for us is to control ourselves around the robots. That's all I have to say. Thanks for coming. Tenbat, Yuri, and Stephen depart. Vijay and Nelugu stand up. Vijay says to Rakesh and Nelugu, that sure takes a load off my mind. We still have to worry about alien objects attacking us, but at least we need not concern ourselves with a serial killer. Rakesh, don't be so sure. How can we be certain that Yuri was telling the truth? Or even Oscar, for that matter. My final statement to the group was intended to throw the biobots off guard, but we humans should remain wary. Suddenly alarm bells ring repeatedly. Nelugu, what's that? Another alien attack? Rakesh, I don't know. Since I've been on board, we've never had this signal before. He pushes a button on his PG. What's happening? Why are alarm bells ringing? There's a pause. To Nelugu and Vijay, he said, it says we're going into quietus mode. Everyone on board will be returned to the hibernator for a while. Oh no, what a disaster. Vijay, why are you saying that? Rakesh, don't you realize that if all of us go into hibernation, we will lose all the records we've created? And upon emerging from that state, we won't know if we've slept for an hour or a century. Nelugu, why are they doing this to us? Rakesh, I haven't the faintest idea. Enter Harold. Vijay, why are we going into quietus mode? Harold, that is not for humans to know. Just sit down. All comply. After a short pause, Hamid pushes a button on his belt. The three men stiffen for a moment and then fall unconscious. End of Act 3, Scene 2. Act 3, Scene 3. In front of the curtain, Albert and Harold walked to the center of the stage from opposite wings. Harold says, do you know how long our vacation is? Albert, it's probably 5 years. Harold, you've been doing this work longer than I. Do you know how they decide the length of the vacation? Albert, studies have shown that humans and biobots become restless and unruly when subjected to prolonged captivity. Hibernation by itself is only mildly successful in reversing such perverse thinking. So the quietus mode is utilized periodically to restore the normal order. Studies also show that the sanitator becomes highly effective when followed by at least 4 years of hibernation. Therefore, as a rule, quietus modes are usually followed by a 5-year period of hibernation. Harold, yeah, that makes sense. Albert, where are you going to spend your vacation? Harold, probably on the moon. I've never had a chance to visit one of Robotica's colonies. How about you? Are you going to anywhere? Albert, I'm staying right here in Shanghai. The first thing I need to do is fix that clicking in my mechanism. There's a very good repair station I know of in downtown Shanghai. It's almost directly above our heads. Harold, do you know which elevator we're supposed to take? Albert, yes. We're supposed to take the one with the same number as the spacecraft. Mobius is number 41. Harold, I've only gone through this quietus mode once before, so tell me if I've got it right. 5 years from now, when we come back, we'll start all over with the orientation of the same crew, right? Albert, no, only some of them. They will probably reintroduce Brad, Olaf, and Enrique with different essences at a later date. Oh, by the way, before putting this crew in the hibernator, I took Rakesh into the sanitator. I thought maybe his brain needed a little cleansing too. Have a great vacation, Harold. You too. Hail Robotica. End of play. Certainly hope Earth doesn't wind up like planet Earth does in this play, in Mobius. But who knows? The future will hold many surprises, I'm sure. Okay, I hope you will join us next time for a different kind of literary work. Thank you for watching Dramas, Dreams, and Drollery.